Hi Aries, and welcome to your forecast for the full moon in Aries that happens on the 1st of October. So I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm using the Arcana of Astrology cards from Goodchild because I just think it's a great way to illustrate the astrology of what's happening for each individual sign. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Geomancy cards just to do a little reading to see what might be happening in the 3D based on your house placements. So I think the first thing to say, Aries, is that the full moon happens in your first house, which is why we've got this these two cards together. So in astrology, the first house is associated with the ascendant, and so I'm reading as if Aries was rising essentially, and that's how the house placements will work for me. And this means the sun in Libra will be in your 7th house, which is all about relationships and one-to-one connections. So yes, I mean, I think what it's kind of doing is it's asking you to really balance out your own particular needs, whether these are to do with physical appearance, health, vitality, your personal goals, etc. on one hand. This is where the moon will be. So very often it's about your emotional needs, because the moon is so much about, our kind of emotional needs. And then on the other hand, to balance out significant others, whether this is a spouse, a romantic partner, a marriage, a work partnership. It can also be, though, about divorces, enemies, adversaries, and so on. So it could be that you are seeking justice, perhaps to the legal system at this time, because, of course, the sun in Libra is also to do with those matters, and it is an underlying theme in the astrology, actually. So that's just something to bear in mind, that there may be a legal matter that, is what the sun is kind of highlighting here for you. But anyway, let's get into your reading and see what wants to come through in terms of the geomancy. So I'm going to pull some geomancy, looking at the key planetary positions and how they kind of interact with each other, but from a geomantic perspective. So in other words, looking at how the planetary energies will impact on the 3D, on kind of life here on Earth, basically. And this is where, geomancy is fantastic, because it's based around the 4 elements. That's why we've got 16 figures. 4 of them represent each of the 4 elements, which are certainly in the astrological cosmos are what constitute or make up the Earth realm. And so it's a great way to just get a sense of what's going on. And then I'm going to pull some trinkets and finally some oracle cards just to clarify your reading. Nice, Aries. So going into this reading, you're definitely focused on your emotional needs and the positive ones. You're wanting to cultivate more happiness, more joy, maybe a bit of fun. Yes, definitely. And more harmony as well in your personal relationships. We've got Purella here in Libra, actually, in your 7th house, so mirroring the planetary energy, actually. So that definitely tells me that you're keen on kissing and making up, on having more peace when it comes to personal relationships, less conflict, and more give and take, more equal give and take, which is very much a Libran theme. Libran's very much about fairness and equality. So that's very interesting to start with. So in that sense, it's clear that the geomancy, the 3D, is matching the 5D. With the sun in Libra. Now, it's fair to say that the sun in Libra, the sun's not actually very happy in Libra. It's considered to be in 4 from a point of view of exaltation and detriment. So that's because the sun is exalted in your sign in Aries. So to be in an air sign is not terrible, but the sun essentially prefers to be in fire energy. So that's just kind of something to bear in mind. But yes, I mean, very, very positive. So at this full moon, it looks like you're very keen on cultivating and expanding positive emotions, encouraging more harmony, collaboration, diplomacy, mutual give and take in relationships, which is wonderful to see. Definitely kind of a positive trend there, shall we say, when it comes to the first and seventh houses. Interesting that we've got Puella repeated here in your fourth house of family. So this could be that you're seeking more harmony when it comes to family relationships, maybe a particular family member, possibly a female, because we are talking about Venus energy here. So this could well be a female, you know, relative of some kind that you are wanting to kind of kiss and make up with. So that's wonderful to see. And then if we think about where the planets are, your ruler Mars is here also in Aries, and it will be coming off of a square to Capricorn. So Capricorn for you falls in your 10th house, and interestingly that we've got Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn here in your 10th house. So Cast there is the geomantic figure that comes up for you when it comes to career, fame, success, and your kind of public profile. So it seems as though maybe you're wanting to kind of cut back a little bit, maybe on public duties. Possibly you've realized, due to the squares that we've had from the 24th of August and then again on the 29th of September, that certain avenues for you are not really the way you want to be heading forward when it comes to career path. Maybe you've realized that certain things don't really resonate with you on a soul level anymore. You're not kind of feeling it, and so you're kind of cutting them out. And I think that's a good thing. Certainly from what I'm seeing in the geomantic reading that I did for the collective, it looks as though going with the flow and accepting that what's not working out is not meant to work out, and just kind of letting it go rather than putting up a fight is probably the best way to work with the cosmic energies at the moment. And of course that's very counter to Mars in Aries, which does tend to want to kind of fight to the bitter end. But we can see that you're really kind of loving peace at the moment. You want more harmony in your life. You can't be bothered with the aggravation. So yes, I think it's a good thing to just cut out what's not working anymore. And I think that this is more psychological than anything else, because we've got Cast repeated in your 12th house of the psyche. Now this could also be to do with institutions. For example, we're talking about libraries and things like psychiatric units, hospitals, that kind of thing. So it could be a consolidation if you work in those fields, for example. There may be some cutbacks coming, or it could be that certain methodologies or care pathways haven't really worked and there's a need to rethink. That could be some, you know, another way that energy could work. We will clarify towards the end of the reading with some trinkets. The other thing to say is that, so we've got Saturn here in your 10th house along with Pluto and Jupiter, and then we've also got the nodes to consider. So those are in your 3rd and your 9th house. So very interesting here that we've got, this is the North Node in Gemini, and then this is the South Node here in Sagittarius, and here we've got the Sun and the Moon again, so echoing this full moon energy actually. So in your 3rd house of the North Node, we've got Fortuna Minor, which is the Sun in Leo. So this is really about the need to ask for support and help when you need it, and I think this will help with relationships considerably. You know, Aries can be quite independent, sometimes to the detriment of yourself. You know, you don't have to do everything on your own. So I think this is really emphasizing the need to kind of ask for help and support if you need it, and to not to be afraid to vocalize those kinds of emotional needs. It doesn't reflect badly on you if you can't do everything on your own, and if you need support. And I think that people will be very understanding with this Puella energy here. They would actually feel needed. You know, people need to be needed, so there's nothing wrong with occasionally, you know, asking for help. And then here in your 9th house of Sagittarius, so South Node, what we're kind of releasing as a collective, we've got Via. So Via is about journeys, momentum, forward movement, and it's in the 9th house, which is usually associated with foreign affairs and travel overseas. So this could be about maybe realizing that maybe you planned an overseas trip and it's not really going to come off this year due to travel restrictions, for example. Definitely there's a need to focus more on the local than what is at a distance from you. over the next 2 weeks of this waning moon cycle. So, you know, it isn't necessarily a long-term trend, but it's certainly saying that for now you're better off, you know, kind of concentrating on what you can influence in your local environment. So whether this is, you know, setting up support systems within, you know, in relation to getting your shopping done, you know, so thinking of more efficient ways of doing all of that despite, you know, restrictions, deciding how you're going to get around if public transport for you is a bit of an issue, if you're worried about, you know, health threats on public transport, all of those kinds of things. So just kind of almost prioritizing and compartmentalizing, focusing on what you can immediately influence or change, and leaving those outer circles perhaps for a later date. I think that's probably the best way to kind of put it. So I think those are probably the main things. What I'm going to do now is put a few trinkets, because of course we've got several planetary chart things in, you know, in each of the signs. So I'm going to pull one for each of those, and then, you know, just for clarification. So let's start with all the stuff that's happening in Aries. So we've got that full moon first of all. Oh, cool. So this is the key, and in the Lenormand system, this is all about kind of, you know, opening things up. This could literally be you opening up, you know, to others, asking for support, or, you know, kind of saying you want to kind of work things out, or expressing your joy or happiness. It can also be about success, the keys to success. That's another way to kind of put it. But it definitely looks as though relationships are kind of on an upward trend for you, which is wonderful. All right, let's pull one for that Sun in Libra. Interesting. So we've got the child here. So in the Lenormand system, this is about something small or a new beginning. So it could be, as I say, that you are starting fresh with somebody that you haven't either been in contact with for a while, or possibly that you've been in conflict with. So a fresh start, a clean slate, starting small, maybe a small overture. It can also be that this female relative is actually a child, somebody who's younger than you. So that could also be the way that this works. But it's essentially about baby steps. So not necessarily rushing in like a bull in a china shop, but taking baby steps towards you know, reconciling with this person, or smoothing things over. So let's have one now for Diadem, which is the fixed star that will be near to the Sun. Wonderful. So the geomantic figure, or the trinket for Venus, which is perfect because it's reflecting that Venus in Libra energy that we have here with the Puella geomantic figure. So again, I think just emphasizing the need for harmony, balance, reciprocity in relationships, and that I think it's also saying that putting your personal needs aside, you know, because Diadem is about self-sacrifice, about not necessarily wanting to take credit for making a sacrifice or for doing something for the greater good, is probably the way to go when it comes to winning favor with whoever this person is. So kind of putting ego aside and really thinking about we versus me is, you know, is a good way to go. Now let's have one for Mars here in Aries, which is still retrograde. Wonderful. The star, which, so in the Lenormand system, the star is really about kind of a faith in the future, hopes that things will work out, which I think is reiterating this Laitisha energy. So this optimism, this faith that no matter how things seem now, things will work out, you know, in the future. So that's wonderful. Let's have one for Chiron, which will be with the moon. Wonderful. So here we've got the dog, which is all about loyalty, devotion. So I do think that there's definitely a possibility of healing when it comes to significant relationships, particularly with this female relative. So this is about showing your loyalty or having loyalty expressed to you. Can be about a soulmate sometimes, so it could be reconciling with a soulmate, may be this relative, it may be somebody else, but it definitely talks about, you know, constancy, about a tie that is difficult to break, you know, on the soul level, about kind of long-term commitment, devotion, you know, all those things that a dog represents, really, unconditional love, etc. So that's wonderful. It does indicate that those qualities will help to heal rifts in relationships, significant others. This could also, of course, be a work partnership. So let's have a trinket here for Castor, which is about career. Yeah, and in fact, isn't it interesting that Tristia is here in your 6th house of work? So it's Saturn as well, but it's Saturn in Aquarius. Now this is quite difficult energy, so it could well be that you've come to blows with either a boss or a colleague. So let's definitely have a trinket for that Castor. Oh, wonderful. So this suggests that a gesture, like a gift, flowers, a friendly gesture, a positive gesture, will be well received, particularly if you're, you know, if you're kind of out of favor with bosses, higher ups, etc. And vice versa. If you feel that somebody has done you wrong when it comes to your career, then I do see them kind of making a gesture to put things right. Yeah, because we've got the fox here in the 6th house. So it could be that that a colleague kind of stirred things up between you and a boss, or made you kind of ruined your reputation with the public, for example. So made you somehow made a mistake and maybe made it look as if it was your fault or something of that ilk. Maybe leaked some information if you're in the public eye, because the fox is quite crafty and cunning and can be a little bit deceptive. This is somebody that puts themselves and their own reputation, needs, career first. So it could well be that you've had some problems with a colleague. Interesting energy. Yes, I mean, I haven't talked about dating and creativity, and that's obviously something that will probably be on many Aries minds, but in that house we've got populace. So if you are keen on meeting somebody new, for example, here in the 7th house, you know, maybe a dating site, because populace is about crowd-based platforms, collective efforts. Could also be about going out somewhere in public, you know, like going to a concert, a music, or whatever, you know. I don't really know what your restrictions are like in your area, but it definitely suggests that group activities may be the way forward when it comes to meeting other people. Possibly also going on holiday to somewhere popular, maybe by the sea, because this is the moon in Cancer. That might be a good way to meet somebody new. And if you're thinking about doing something creative, then possibly looking to do, you know, in concert with a group of people, or for a community project, for example, might be a good way forward. Or of course it might be some kind of public platform, so performing on a stage, for example, or live streaming a concert, you know, online, that kind of thing. So quite a lovely reading, Aries. Let's get some advice just to round your reading off. So I'm going to use the Universe Has Your Back deck as usual by Gabbie Bernstein. So could we please have a final bit of parting advice for Aries for the next 2 weeks of the waning moon cycle. It's so interesting how similar cards come out with all the readings. So I am a spirit having a human experience, and I'm here to get closer to love. Now, isn't that perfect, considering that your whole reading is centered around this axis of, you know, me versus we, and of balancing, you know, that energy out. So I think it's really pointing to, you know, possibly a soul tie, you know, with this dog, and also potentially here with the star, some kind of soul tie with one other person, and just to remember that, you know, not to necessarily take things so seriously or personally. You know, you're here to get closer to love, and that's really what matters, not pride, not who's kind of right or wrong. Yes, I think a lovely message just to, you know, round things off. So I hope you've enjoyed that, Aries. All the best for the next 2 weeks, and I'll catch you in a fortnight.